Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. This is THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is THI staff writer and football analyst, Mr. Brandon Peay, as we continue to crunch together every day a different position group discussion as we gear toward the start of North Carolina's fall camp. The players report August 1st. First practice is August 2nd. And the Tar Heels open their season September 2nd in Charlotte against South Carolina. We will spend a lot of time in August as we get closer to the opener, talking about how the team does in August, what things we're learning, and we can offer a lot of perspective heading toward that very important opener. And just a reminder very quickly, if you are not a member of Tar Heel Illustrated, you need to hop on over there. It's just $8.33 a month. It is less than a number at a drive-thru, unless it's a kid's meal. I think a kid's meal is the only thing cheaper than THI now every month. And what you get very quickly is access to all of our content, all of our premium content, football, basketball, recruiting for both sports. And remember, we go everywhere the Tar Heels go. And also the community. The community is something that a lot of people keep talking to me about. If you are tired of having Carolina or trying to have Carolina conversations with people who only know a little bit about the programs, go over to our boards. Everyone there knows a ton about the programs. So they're like-minded, passionate Carolina fans like you, and you could go there and hang out and become a member of our community and access all of our inside information, perspective, and everything else. So, Brandon, we have blown through the offense. We did the defensive line. Now we're going to take a look at the Jacks. We decided to separate the linebackers because the Jacks are in a unique position. They have a lot of responsibility setting the edge, number one. And they have two guys on that side in that position group that, quite frankly, graded out exceptionally high last year and are both players that will be on NFL camps next year, provided that Rucker doesn't use his COVID year and come back. And then after that, there's a huge drop-off. So let's talk about the Jack position moving forward. Get your thoughts on that group, what you expect from them, and what you like about what the Tar Heels have in that room, which is coached by Gene Chizik.
Yeah, I think overall the Jacks, I think they have a good mix of young and old. I think having someone like Amari Gaynor, who me and you, we've talked about numerous times, who has a guy who has all the physical tools to play on Sunday, and a guy who came to Carolina to prove that he is a guy who can play on Sunday. He came to Carolina with a very clear mission. And then you also got a guy like Rucker, who might not have all the physical tools that the NFL scouts look for, but he certainly has the intangibles and the production that the scouts look for. And I mean, there's an argument to be made that Rucker is the most accomplished defensive player on UNC's team. And then you got Gaynor, who was also a very highly productive player at Florida State. So now you have these two together. If these two guys can stay healthy, the Jack, there's literally no concerns with the Jack position. I think this would be one of those proven groups like the tight ends and the quarterbacks that we talked about. But they have to stay healthy because, as you said, when you get behind them, things get very young. I mean, you got Jabron Harvey. He had 28.5 sacks as a high school senior, which is highly impressive. A lot of people look at stars and where a player is ranked. I'm a big fan of production, and getting 28 half sacks at any level is just really, really shows you. Yeah, it shows you how talented he is. He's ridiculously talented, but, going to the ACC, that's just a whole nother level of physicality in football that I'm not sure if he's ready for it. I don't know if he's ready for it. He might get ready for it as the season goes along. Yeah. And I think between him and Tyler Thompson, he's far more along than Tyler. He's more along than Tyler Thompson is. But I think he might get more ready as the season goes along. But I think the Jack is one of those positions, like it was last year, that if there's an injury there, I'm not sure who it would be, but somebody would have to switch positions. Like the way that Rucker went from edge rusher to Jack last season, somebody would have to come over and add some depth to that room.
Yeah, he did that after Noah Taylor went down. And it was unfortunate that Noah went down the week before the Virginia game. He didn't get a chance to play in the Virginia game against his old school, but I think they're in better shape now because they at least have both Gaynor and Rucker. Now, I still think we didn't mention Rucker when we talked about the defensive line in that discussion, and we didn't because he's a Jack, and he's starting everything off as a Jack. However, I wouldn't be surprised in certain situations to see him line up as a rush end because he's the best pass rusher on this team. And it maybe if other guys aren't producing like they should, because there's some defensive ends that kind of need to step up. They want Jacoby Cowan to take another step. They want Des Evans to take that next step. They want Jahvaree Ritzie, if he's even lined up on the outside, to take that next step. They've got it. And Bo Atkinson's young. So if they need Rucker to play some rush end, I think he will play a little bit of rush end, but he's also going to play a lot of jack. And the key for playing the jack position is setting the edge. I think that's something Kaman will be able to do. But Gaynor is the guy that is really intriguing here. He played 1,500 snaps at Florida State. At this time a year ago, or at the end of the season last year, for the current roster at that time, he had more tackles than anybody on the roster as far as his career at FSU goes. And he graded out at 82.5 last year. But that was just playing sort of an outside linebacker, a little bit of end type stuff, what they were doing at Florida State. His position here at Carolina is a little bit different. And that's why he chose to come to Carolina, because he thinks that he could showcase, first of all, fine tune, and then showcase the skills that are required to play the jack that would get him a better opportunity at the NFL. Rucker, he played 1,238 snaps last year, graded out at 84.1, and that's with switching positions. His full grade, 84.1. That's going from rush end in the middle of the year. That week, hey, Kaman, you're a jack now. And he handled it very, very well and still graded out well. So you said about the intangibles. That's what Kaman Rucker has. And I would never count out Kaman Rucker. Of anybody on this team, I would never count him out, because he's the guy that's going to dig down and give you that little something extra that gets him over the hump. So they're in very good shape in those first two spots. We didn't mention Malachi Hamrick. He would be the third guy, and I think he'd be someone that might, if they need to put Rucker more at rush in, I think if Hamrick was healthy, he would give them a little bit of that depth behind Gaynor to allow them to do that. But he's been injured, and the understanding and the expectation is that he's probably out for the season. So that hurts. That's where that massive cavern between Gaynor and Rucker, and then Harvey and Thompson are. And very quickly about Jabron Harvey, 6'2 and a half, 240 pounds, and he looked the part during the spring. I watched him a lot, watched a bunch of drills. And then Tyler Thompson, 6'5", 215, he didn't look the part. And they acknowledged that, but they also liked a lot of what he did. And Chizik was coaching the two of them up a bunch, because one of the two of them needs to be somewhat ready, at least by the South Carolina game, because they're going to need a third guy in case of attrition. So I'm going to ask you about Gaynor, specifically about bringing in a new guy like that, a guy from a conference, a rival conference. Well, they're not really rivals. They maybe used to be a little bit, but not now. But because they played him a couple of years ago. But a guy coming over from another conference school that's going to step in and have an opportunity to have a huge voice on that defense. He's sort of a quiet guy, but I've been told that he's the kind of guy that when he speaks up, people have to listen because there's something there. What do you think about him bringing that element to a defense that has a couple of vocal older guys already on it?
Oh, wait, before I answer that, I think Tyler Thompson and Jabron Harvey, one of them, they need to be at least ready. They need to at least be able to take over the role that Malachi Hamrick had last season. Get on the field at least a little bit. I think they need to at least develop to that point. But to answer your question, I think Amari Gaynor coming into – I think a guy like Amari Gaynor coming into Carolina's locker room I don't think you can ever have too many leaders, like especially when they're natural leaders, like when it's like a natural thing. And this team, this program is always looking for more alpha dogs to be leaders, and I think they can get that in Amari Gaynor, because Amari Gaynor is a guy that's coming into his last season of college football extremely focused. And he played linebacker. He played, like you say, he was more of an outside linebacker at more of a traditional. I would call him more of a traditional outside linebacker. Yeah. At Florida State, standing up more. But he showed that he had a nose for the ball. He can get to the ball. He can make tackles. So now he comes to Carolina. They put him at the jack position, and if he can be as productive as he was at the traditional outside linebacker position, if he can be that productive at jack, he's going to put himself in a position to make a lot of money in the NFL, because this season he's going to have a lot more opportunity to rush the passer. And if you can get back there a lot, I mean, that's the most coveted. That's one of the most coveted skills in football. So if he can do that, he came here, he put himself in a position. If he can have a productive season, keep up the productivity, but in a new position, I think he can put himself in a good position for the next level.
Well, that's why he came. Yeah. He said that. This is a career move. This is the next leg to what he hopes is a professional football future. And he's almost treating it like a pro football job. And he told me that, look, I got to show I can rush the passer better. And the Jack does that. Set the edge, rush the passer. It's a little more physical position than the outside linebacker spot. He played at Florida State, and they had him rush a little bit, but it's different where he's going to come from now. And I think he's going to find himself engaging in some tackles, getting around some tackles, and just showing off some athletic ability that you absolutely have to have on the edge. And let's remember, his dad played at Florida State. He's an FSU legacy. He loves FSU. But he said, you know what? I really like Carolina blue now, too. So that's an adjustment that he chose to make. You know, he left his dream school and he went to North Carolina for business. This is strictly a business situation for him. And that's what I like, because there's another guy on defense we'll talk about in the next podcast that also made a business decision, and that's Cedric Gray. Cedric could have gone in the third or fourth round. He's came back to go in the first round. So you've got some older guys on that defense that made business decisions to come back to school. It's been a while since you could say that about North Carolina's defense, which is why I asked about Gainer's voice. I think that's an important voice. That's a no BS, I'm going to do everything the right way every day guy that you have in that room, along with Rucker. And that's great for those young kids. They're going to see exactly the way to do it, but the rest of the defense too. And there's some other older guys that came in on defense that are there to get to the next level. That's one of the things that fans, when they think about this defense and they look back to last year's struggles, they got to remember some of the key components on this defense had nothing to do with last year. Amari Gainer had nothing to do with it. Elijah Huzzy had nothing to do with it. Armani Chapman had nothing to do with it. And Tavius Stick Lane had nothing to do with it. They were producing elsewhere. So I think that's one of the things that's really important about this defense is it's going to have a different flavor because it's got different voices.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with that. And I think the most important, I think it's not a secondary podcast, but a lot of the troubles that UNC faced last year can be, I believe, can be rooted back to the secondary. The not getting to the quarterback in time is because if it's a 3-step drop, as soon as that third foot hits the ground, it's an open, the receiver's open, he can let it go. There's no conflict. A lot of
soft coverage, though. And we'll hit on that. We're going to hit on that when we talk quarterback.
We'll hit on that later. We'll hit
on that later. But I think that, but if you have a guy that can set the tone at the jack position, that's where we're going with this. The jack position isn't just an isolated do your job thing. And that position could set the tone for everything else. I thought Noah Taylor was pretty solid with that last year, but the defense was new under Chizik. Gene Chizik was learning to adjust his approach to the way the game had changed since he went out after the 2016 season. And I've talked to someone very close to the situation who said, look, a big part of his offseason has been adjusting his defense to the way offenses are. And they did make some progress, and they caught on late in the season, did a little bit better. But when you're talking about bringing in some guy from somewhere else, playing where football is important, and he's a guy that can set the tone for your defense, that's what I love about Gainer. And you know what? Rucker can do that too. Because Rucker has always been a guy doing that. But now in that position, maybe he can actually have a greater impact in setting that tone. And then you've got Cedric Gray and Power Echols setting a tone. And you've got some other older guys in other parts of the defense. And oh, by the way, the defensive line should be improved as well. That's why I think that's such an important element of this jack position. It's better situated now as a jack than it was a year ago. And it's better situated than that hybrid position was under Jay Bateman at any time. So I think for Carolina fans, when they go into this year, they shouldn't be worried about the jack position. I think that is a position that should give fans tremendous amount of confidence. And that's important because, like I said, it sort of sets the tone in a lot of respects.
I think in Gene Chizik's defense, the jack and the star position specifically are in position to make plays for this defense. I think those two positions are. I think those two positions are like in special position to make plays in that defense. And I think now having a guy like Amari Gaynor, who showed he can make plays, but just at a different position. And now having Rucker, who I think, especially when it comes to pass rusher, he's a playmaker. He will put an offensive tackle in the quarterback's lap really fast. And I just think that's what they need at this position. And like you said earlier, if they can just stay healthy, I think this group, there's no issues with this group.
Just as a reminder, those two guys graded out at 82.5 and 84.1 last year, which is highly impressive. I know some people have issues with PFF grades, but I think you could argue that about offensive line grades, especially, but I don't think defensive grades. I think defensive grades are more accurate for the most part than a lot of offensive grades are. So that's our discussion about the Jack. We're going to do inside linebackers, cornerbacks, and when we do safeties, we're going to also do the star position with the safeties as we continue to look ahead to the start of fall camp for North Carolina. August 2nd is the first practice. We will be at every availability. We will be at every open practice. And of course, we go to every football and basketball game. We go where the Tar Heels go. For Brandon, I'm AJ. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks.